The story of Ebed-Melech, the courageous Ethiopian, Jeremiah 38-39. In the often overlooked pages of the Bible, there is a story about a man named Ebed-Melech, an Ethiopian eunuch who, though a foreigner with no significant status, acted with tremendous courage and faith in God during a time of great danger. His story stands out as a powerful example of standing up for righteousness, speaking out for those who are oppressed, and trusting God in the face of peril. Ebed-Melech's actions speak to the heart of what it means to be a true servant of God, regardless of the challenges. The story. It was the reign of King Zedekiah of Judah, a weak and indecisive ruler placed on the throne by the Babylonian Empire. At this time, the prophet Jeremiah had been given a message from God, a message that was not only unpopular, but downright dangerous to the political and religious establishment. Jeremiah's prophecy warned the people of Judah that unless they repented of their sins, they would face the inevitable destruction of their beloved city, Jerusalem, at the hands of the Babylonians. Jeremiah preached that the Babylonians would conquer the city, and only those who surrendered would survive. This message, though from God, angered the leaders and elite of the city. They did not want to hear about judgment and destruction. They preferred false assurances and hopeful lies. Because of this, the leaders plotted to silence Jeremiah, seeing him as a threat to their positions of power. One day, they decided to act. They took Jeremiah and threw him into a cistern, a deep, muddy well with no water, hoping that he would die there. The pit was filled with mud, and there was no way to escape. Jeremiah, a prophet of God, was left to sink into the mire and starve. However, in this moment of grave injustice, Ebed-Melech, a Cushite, an Ethiopian eunuch, who served in the king's palace, could not stay silent. Though a foreigner with no real power or influence, he understood that the treatment of God's prophet was wrong. His heart was moved with compassion for Jeremiah's plight. While the rest of the city either ignored or condoned the injustice, Ebed-Melech took bold action. He went before King Zedekiah, who was already under immense pressure, seeking to keep the peace with the Babylonians while appeasing his leaders. Ebed-Melech, in a moment of extraordinary bravery, spoke out. He said to the king, "My lord the king, these men have done evil in all they have done to Jeremiah the prophet. They have thrown him into the cistern, and he will die there of hunger, for there is no more bread in the city." Jeremiah 38:9. Ebed-Melech's plea was not just an emotional cry, but a logical and compassionate argument. He pointed out that throwing a man into a pit to starve, with no food in the city to sustain him, was an act of cruelty. Amazingly, the king listened. In an unexpected turn of events, King Zedekiah gave permission for Ebed-Melech to act, though he was probably relieved to have someone else take responsibility for the situation. Without wasting time, Ebed-Melech gathered 30 men to help him. They set out to rescue Jeremiah from the cistern. When they reached the pit, they lowered old rags and worn-out clothes to Jeremiah, telling him to tie them around his arms and shoulders so that the ropes wouldn't hurt him. They used these makeshift tools to lift Jeremiah from the mire, showing great care in ensuring that the prophet was safely pulled from the pit. In a moment of danger and adversity, Ebed-Melech's actions saved Jeremiah from death. Though the events seemed to pass unnoticed in the grand story of Judah's fall, God did not forget Ebed-Melech's bold actions. In the midst of the coming judgment on Jerusalem, when the city was besieged and its destruction was imminent, God sent a special message through Jeremiah to Ebed-Melech. "I will surely save you, and you shall not fall by the sword, but you shall have your life as a prize of war, because you have put your trust in me, declares the Lord." Jeremiah 39:18. The promise from God was clear. Because of Ebed-Melech's courageous act of rescuing his prophet and his unwavering trust in God's protection, God would preserve his life. While the city of Jerusalem would fall and the people would face the consequences of their rebellion, Ebed-Melech would be spared. God made a point of honoring this hidden hero, promising his safety when others were perishing. Lessons from Ebed-Melech. The story of Ebed-Melech offers profound insights into the heart of a true servant of God. His actions teach us several critical lessons. Do what is right, even when it's risky. Ebed-Melech had no power, no status, and no guarantee that his actions would be rewarded. Yet he acted courageously, risking his own life to help Jeremiah. His example challenges us to act according to our convictions, even when doing so might cost us something. Whether in small, everyday situations or in times of significant moral crisis, doing what is right is always worth the risk. Speak up for the oppressed. At a time when others turned a blind eye to the injustice being done to Jeremiah, Ebed-Melech chose to speak out. He did not allow the majority opinion or the pressures of society to dictate his actions. Instead, he stood with the oppressed and took action on their behalf. In our own lives, we are called to do the same, to stand up for those who cannot stand for themselves, even when it's difficult or unpopular. Trust in God's protection. Ebed-Melech's trust in God's provision and protection was unwavering. Though he did not know how his actions would play out, he trusted that God would honor his faithfulness. God's promise to preserve his life is a testimony of how God rewards those who trust in him, even when the outcome seems uncertain. In moments of fear or insecurity, we can take comfort knowing that God promises to be with us and protect us when we step out in faith. God honors those who act with courage. Ebed-Melech's actions might seem small in the larger narrative of history, but in God's eyes, they were monumental. God sees and honors even the most hidden acts of courage. Whether we are in positions of power or obscurity, God notices when we act with faith, courage, and compassion. Faith in God transcends all barriers. Ebed-Melech was a foreigner, a man with no particular claim to the promises of Israel. Yet, his faith in God made him a key figure in the story of Judah. This shows us that God does not limit his grace and protection to a specific group. Anyone who chooses to trust in him can receive his guidance and favor regardless of their background or status. Ebed-Melech's story reminds us that God often works through the unexpected, the foreigner, the powerless, the seemingly unnoticed. God can use anyone to bring about his purposes, and he promises to protect those who take a stand for justice and trust in him. Through the courage of a single man, God's faithfulness was revealed, and a powerful lesson was given to all who would listen.